September the 11th, 1851 was the date that the Christiana resistance took place. The town was put under martial law. A detachment of Marines were sent in. 141 people were arrested, taken to the local Zerkers hotel and held. The charge was murder. This came about because a gentleman by the name of Edward Gorsuch had come into Christiana along with a deputy U.S. Marshal, his son, and several neighbors to reclaim his property for runaway slaves that were supposed to be with William Parker in his house just outside of Christiana. When they got to the house, a fight ensued. Mrs. Parker, from the upstairs window, blew on this horn, which was a signal to the people in the area that there were kidnappers at the Parker place. People came from all directions, both black and white, carrying pitchforks, clubs, guns, whatever they could grab a hold of, to come and help William Parker defend himself against the slave catchers. The end result was that Edward Gorsuch was killed, his son Dickinson was severely wounded, a number of the others in the party were wounded. One was hit on the head so hard that for days he didn't know his own name. Everybody ran away when two white people came upon the scene and saw that there was a dead man there. And they told Parker and his brother-in-law, Alexander Pinckney, "You'd better get out of here. You've killed a white man. It's really serious at this point in time." Everybody else scattered except Parker and Pinckney. And they went back to the Levi Panel farm to get a horse and wagon to take the wounded Dickinson Gorsuch to a doctor. They weren't able to get away from the farm at that point. People came from all around and surrounded the farm. It wasn't until the next day that William Parker and Pinckney were able to get on the Underground Railroad and make their way to Canada. It was several days or several weeks later, probably, before the two wives and their children were able to get up to Buxton, Canada, and meet up with their husbands. Meanwhile, back here, 141 people were arrested by the Marines and by the local sheriff and by some police officers from Lancaster, and they were held in the attic of the Zerker Hotel, which is now the Bond Machine Company. They were going to be charged with murder until President Millard Fillmore got a telegram from Governor Lowe of Maryland that said, in effect, if the federal government doesn't do something serious about this murder of this Southern gentleman, Maryland will secede from the Union. This is 1851. So Millard Fillmore decided to try to appease the South. He would bring a charge, the government would bring a charge of treason against the government of the United States. Now, Fillmore was an attorney, as well as those around him had law degrees. And they advised him, you'll never get a conviction. He said, in effect, I don't care. I must show these Southern governors that the federal government means business. So that was the charge that was filed. Out of the group that was arrested, 39 people were selected. The prosecution decided that out of the 39, they would bring charges first against a man by the name of Kastner Hanway, a white man they thought was a Quaker. He wasn't a Quaker, his wife was, but they didn't know that. And they used as their prime witness Deputy U.S. Marshal Henry H. Klein, and they couldn't possibly have picked a worse person to put on the stand. He was caught in so many lies that later he was put on trial for perjury. After 3 weeks of testimony, the judge charged the jury. They left, came back in 10 minutes, not guilty. So now the prosecution's in a quandary. They've got all these other people that they've charged but not brought to trial, and they've said to the judge, we've presented our best case and haven't been successful. So we can't go any farther with this. So the judge figures, all right, there's a murder charge hanging over the head of these people in Lancaster County. We'll ship them back to Lancaster County Prison, which is exactly what he did. The folks in Lancaster were very wise politically, and they knew that if they brought charges against this group of people who were defending their right to be free, they probably would not be reelected the next time they ran for office. So within 24 hours, everyone was released. No one was ever brought up on a charge of murder. And back down south, Edward Gorsuch's young son, Tom, who was 15 years old at the time, and wanted to come with his dad to try to capture the runaways, had a bosom buddy. And he was talking to him about what had happened to his dad. And he said, my father's been murdered by those people up north, and nothing's going to be done about it. And he was terribly distraught. And his bosom buddy was John Wilkes Booth.